and former Nittany Lion standout Rogers Alexander joining us. We'll get into lots of news from the weekend, obviously, and take a look at the week ahead a bit later in the show. But I have to tell you, it's one of those things where I don't know why it hit me as hard as it did, and we'll talk about your relationship, Rogers, with him. I mean, I followed Steve Smith closely as a fan. I was a junior in high school when the Nittany Lions won that '86 championship, and it was at a football camp the one summer. And it was so funny. And kids, for those of you that are more recent to following football, there used to be this position called fullback. It was a really cool position. And Tim Manoa and Steve Smith, I just have to tell you, that captivated the imagination like few tandems ever have in my lifetime. And again, I grew up diehard Penn State fan from the time I was an infant, but remember really kind of vividly from '75 on Penn State games, and that combination of the relationship there, and then obviously that '86 team is always going to be in Penn State fans' hearts forever. But I guess we want to just start with thanking you for coming down, Rogers. First of all, we sincerely appreciate that, and again, Steve Smith battled Lou Gehrig's disease for longer than anybody I've ever known. I've had a few friends and several friends' parents who suffered from the disease, and it is just a god-awful disease. I just hope someday soon we were able to kind of figure out either a cure or a prevention for it, because it's a cruel disease. There's just no way around it. But Steve Smith lived a couple of decades, I think, with it, right?
20 plus years.
Almost 21. That is truly amazing, because again, most of the people I've known that have suffered, it's been a 2 to 3 year process. But let's start with just your. When you got the news and how it kind of hit you as a teammate and obviously very dear friend of Steve's.
Well, as everyone knows, that in the last couple of weeks, things surfaced on Facebook and other places where Steve had, contracted pneumonia and then gone in the hospital, then been released from the hospital. And then had to go back. And when he went back, sepsis set in. So he was such a battler that, we're like, okay, well, he's going to go back in, but he'll, get through it. And there were days when it looked like he was stabilizing and he was going to get better. And then, the doctors, let his wife know and family know that they should probably come and say goodbye as far as like in the next few days. And of course, his aunt and folks were flying down on Saturday morning and were en route. And he passed on Saturday morning at 10:45 in the morning.
Yeah, just shortly before the Penn State Rutgers game kicked off, and obviously, I think most Penn State fans got news of it during the game. Rogers, talk a little bit, if you would, about your relationship with Steve and kind of how the friendship grew over the course of your career, and then even after your playing days.
Well, actually. There's a few people that know this. I'm sure all our classmates do. But Steve and I were transfer students into DeMatha in 10th grade. DeMatha being a private Catholic high school. You start in 9th grade, which was different in the state of Maryland as far as when high school starts. So I've known Steve since we went out for the varsity football team in the summer of 1979. So it's been a while.
that high school team was probably not too bad. Huh?
Not too bad. Not too bad. There's a few guys that, between Tony Page, Mike Johnson, and some other guys off of that team that had 10-plus year careers off of one of the 3 high school teams that we played on.
Right. Just talk a little bit about the, Penn State experience and Steve obviously became an integral part of that 86 team, was a captain on that squad. But, that 85 team was pretty special that you were on it, and probably in many different ways set the stage for the fantastic season that 86 became.
Yeah. I won't share the conversation I had with the rest of my classmates because there were only 4 of us that were not still fifth-year redshirt seniors as they went into that season for the second of 3 attempts at a national title. So, Steve and I's relationship, though, when and I want to finish answering your question, your first one. People don't know this, but I'm sure some of the older Penn Staters do, that Joe had a rule that he would not recruit 2 players from the same class from the same high school. Because he was there's that theory that if you recruit 2, you're either recruiting them both or they're going to both make a decision, yay or nay, so you could lose one, or not just lose one, but lose both. So
interesting.
And because I was an accident, so the reason why I had any scholarship at Penn State is because John Rosenberg came to look at more film on the number 1 tailback in the country, who was Steve Smith.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube. From live music to exciting new flavors, meet your friends and refuel at your local Quaker Steak and Lube today. Can't slow down? Then order online. Pick up and get back on the road. Find us at thelube.com.
It's a jam-packed night at Medler Field on Saturday, July 9th. Be there for history as the State College Spikes hit the field at 6:35 p.m. as the State College Diamond Dogs taking on the Williamsport Board Apes in the first ever NFT Classic. Plus, it's Autism Acceptance Night as the Central PA Autism Community presents a fidget spinner giveaway for the first 200 kids, along with a spectacular post-game fireworks show. And it's a PA Lottery Super Saturday. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, $3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
So Steve Smith was the number 1 tailback, and back then the USA Today put your image in the paper, and there were no stars. So Steve was the equivalent of a 5-star, top 300, the number 1 tailback in the country.
Yeah.
So by accident, John Rosenberg came across me because back then, of course, before the internet existed, your film was on the same reel. So on the same, and he was looking at offense. So he would then fast forward through the defensive part of the film and then look at offense and then fast forward through the defensive part of the film and then look at offense and then do it again. And that particular game was the last game of the season. It was a championship, last game of the season against former champion in our WCAC league, which was Archbishop Carroll. And I happened to knock 3 quarterbacks out of the game on the same blitz. So it looked as if it was a splicing error in the film. So Coach Rosenberg asked one of the coaches, he says, "You guys realize you have a mistake on this film. Somebody messed up and there's the same blitz 3 times." And my coach says, "No, that's 3 different quarterbacks that he knocked out." I was like, "Who is this? Who is that kid?" So, if it weren't for them coming to cross the T's and dot the I's, as everyone knows happened back in the day, I wouldn't have been recruited by Penn State. I was one of those players that once they had offers go out, and then some guys opted for other places and didn't then go to Penn State, then there were 1 or 2 or 3 scholarships left. So that's the reason why I had an opportunity to go to Penn State, is because of Steve Smith.
Huh.
And of course, those some people know those last few scholarships were a couple of skinny defensive end, linebacker, baseball players like myself and Shane Conlon, who got those last few scholarships offers that year. Tom Bradley at Shane's Hall of Fame induction to the College Football Hall of Fame went over that story about going to see him after football season play a basketball game. They never saw him play his senior year.
Yeah. Right.
So that, those kinds of sort of things that people assume that, I was some great player and blah, blah. I was, anything but because of Steve's notoriety and he was the top tailback coming out of the country that Penn State's, assistant coach went back and just double checking everything again, and ran across me. So, I owe my Penn State scholarship career and everything to Steve.
Yeah. Special stuff. Talk a little bit, Rogers, just about the as you guys are going through your Penn State career, and obviously you had tremendous impact on the program right out of the gate. Talk about what that was like for you individually, and then again, just kind of how things progressed as the two of you went through your careers.
Well, I tell you, in the last few weeks, because of, my relationship with Steve and his family and things like that, upon reflection of a lot of things, like the one thing that everyone knows is Steve's smile was infectious. But his sense of humor and his timing, and sometimes just the things that he would say and when he would say them were just spot on. And he knew when to tell you it's all right, like I'm going to be okay. And that's over, since 1979. It's funny because I thought the other night, I said, I wonder how many guys are going to be, sharing the story about Steve and I being in Penn State's camp and we're roommates. So, and of course, I live next to the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. So anybody who knows the DC area knows I live next to a highway that was rather noisy. So our first day of camp, we were nervous, so we were up a little late, and then we went to sleep, and then we woke up, and of course everybody, sort of knows or has heard about the famous foghorn that gets rung under people's doors and wakes them up, and then you go down for your first, breakfast with the team and this, that, and the other. Well, Steve and I slept through that horn. We were like, what horn? We woke up with 10 minutes left before practice, before the meeting started. And then, of course, you go out to practice. We ran from East Halls down to the Lash building, which is now the lacrosse's building.
Yeah.
It's our old locker room. And ran in, and they were like, "Where were you guys?" Like, and they thought they made a mistake that we weren't checked off at breakfast, that somebody just missed us, because no way could they could these guys. So our first day, we were almost late for meetings and then not make it out to practice. And it was kept a secret because, of course, Joe would walk through from his office through Lash building back to the coach's locker room, and then he would pass through the training room and ask Hochberg and Jerry Slagle, everything okay? Everybody here? And they would go, yes. And of course, in the background, they're like scrambling. Hey, where are those two kids from DC? Where? I haven't seen them. One of them's got ankles about yay big, and the other one, like, they should have, traded. Steve should have given half his legs and calves to Raj to make up a full person. So where are they? And then, of course, we run in, and we're like, and they tape us up in 2 minutes. I think they didn't even bother taping Steve. They're like, don't worry, you'll be fine. And we make it out to practice. And of course, we were so scared. We were running down the hill going, we're going to get kicked out, because at DeMatha, you didn't miss anything. You weren't late for anything.
Yeah.
And me being a military kid, being late just didn't exist in my world up until that point.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube. From live music to exciting new flavors, meet your friends and refuel at your local Quaker Steak and Lube today. Can't slow down? Then order online. Pick up and get back on the road. Find us at thelube.com.
It's a jam-packed night at Medler Field on Saturday, July 9th. Be there for history as the State College Spikes hit the field at 6:35 p.m. as the State College Diamond Dogs taking on the Williamsport Board Apes in the first ever NFT Classic. Plus, it's Autism Acceptance Night as the Central PA Autism Community presents a fidget spinner giveaway for the first 200 kids, along with a spectacular post-game fireworks show. And it's a PA Lottery Super Saturday. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
Us oversleeping and sleeping through the horn, like just thinking about that and thinking that's how it started. And of course, when we got back to the room later after the 2 practices and training table, things had taken a turn. In one practice in the morning, Ken Kelly had separated his shoulder and was out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Jeff Hochberg, Mr. Hoch, the trainer's son, had tore his ACL and MCL and was now out for the year. So I went from 5th team to 3rd team in a morning practice and hadn't played it down. In contrast, Steve, who I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be a tailback, gets moved to fullback.
Yeah.
So you would think he would, after that practice and after that second practice, would be back home and he'd be like, man, like I'm, this is not for me. They want me at fullback, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. No, that wasn't Steve at all. Steve was, hey, you got your opportunity to play early because of, some breaks. Take advantage of them. He goes, I'm going to be fine. He says, I'll work my way through whatever I need to work through. You know, he was that kind of person where his own personal battles, whether they be fair or unfair at the time or perceived that way, they didn't exist to a Steve Smith.
Yeah.
It was just another obstacle that he would overcome. And of course, you know, over the years, he's now been affectionately known as Superman, and in more ways than one was a Superman. Superman in his demeanor, Superman in his perseverance. Ultimately, the most Superman in his love of his family, in raising of his family, in loving of his wife, and that sort of, when you saw the love between the both of them, I mean, they went to the movies for 10 years where they had a movie night where one of the theaters down in Texas, down outside of Dallas, would let them come and have a movie night where they would roll the bed in
That's
to
awesome.
the movie theater through the back door, and they would have their movie night. You know, still.
Yeah.
I would look forward to, for years, he would go through 4 or 5 hours worth of his eye following on the screen so he could email. He would use his eyes because at that point nothing else was working well enough. He couldn't email any, you know, other than using the iris. It would take him 4 or 5 hours to make his Sunday picks for the week, NFL picks with the rest of the guys. He was still competitive. You know, it's like, and I, you know, for the longest time, I held those picks, and 4 years ago, I went to see him, and I gave him the tally on over those years, because he, you know, that was the one sort of, there were things that happened over the years where you realize that eventually the disease was going to take him. And the first part was the fact that he couldn't email me anymore for those picks. You know, that hurt. You know, that next NFL season was sort of like, you know, because I really didn't watch a lot of NFL, like whole games. I would just catch, you know, bits and pieces and things like that. So those were sort of, I wouldn't call it a milestone, but it was definitely one of those things where when it hit, it sort of, it lets you know, okay, he's Superman, but yes, he is still human, and he is starting to gradually go. But in all those times, you know, even when I went to see him, like he still had that aura, he still had that presence about him that, you know, whatever it was, he was going to persevere. He was going to see his, you know, daughter Jazzy graduate. He was going to see his son graduate, get married, and he was going to see his grandkids. You know, like, you just had that belief that he was going to do it. Like, and I mean, when you get past year 10 with this disease, and you get into year 15 and you start to look at other players that you heard about in year 7 of 8 of Steve had already passed in year 10 or 11 of Steve, you start to go, okay, Superman is Superman.
Yeah.
And so, but one of the things that a lot of people don't know is the misdiagnosis of Lyme's disease that he was treated for 3 years before it was found about ALS. So my belief is eventually, you know, his brain part of his brain is going to be donated to the place in Boston that does the is that hopefully through Chia's documentation of his whole journey, that Steve will still have the last laugh back at everyone and will still help everyone, because it will lead to a breakthrough for a cure for ALS that may be an accidental but still purposeful one, which is somehow, some way, that 3 years of treatment for Lyme's disease may have slowed the progression down in some way, shape, or form.
Interesting. Wow.
Because that's the one thing that's completely different than all the other guys that I've known that have had, the ALS connected diseases. They were diagnosed. They weren't treated for several years for something else. And he would go, he would fly to Philly once a month to be treated for the Lyme's disease, because they were like, why is it? What's wrong? What's going on? What's going on? And he initially found, was preempted to go see a specialist because he was running around Rec Hall. He was up here visiting Penn State, and he was going for a run in 2001 around Rec Hall, and his feet started to get heavy. And he was jogging, and his legs felt heavy, and that was his first indicator of something was wrong. And then those next couple of years, he was treated for ALS.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube. From live music to exciting new flavors, meet your friends and refuel at your local Quaker Steak and Lube today. Can't slow down? Then order online. Pick up and get back on the road. Find us at thelube.com.
It's a jam-packed night at Medler Field on Saturday, July 9th. Be there for history as the State College Spikes hit the field at 6:35 p.m. as the State College Diamond Dogs taking on the Williamsport Board Apes in the first ever NFT Classic. Plus, it's Autism Acceptance Night as the Central PA Autism Community presents a fidget spinner giveaway for the first 200 kids, along with a spectacular post-game fireworks show. And it's a PA Lottery Super Saturday. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And remember, tell them Johnny sent you.
But, I happened to run into him because I was here at Penn State at the time. And, we end up, running into each other. But, yeah, those are some of the things that, some folks around know, but not everyone knows about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what do you remember about when he was properly then diagnosed with ALS in terms of your reaction and his to that news?
Like everything, he digested it. He and his wife thought out a plan. She was very instrumental in his nutrition, which I'm sure is going to be one of those factors where everybody's going to talk about his longevity. They looked at all kinds of options holistically, things like that would change his nutrition. And her care of him was his greatest endeavor, you would think, or the greatest thing that he received was a national championship or a scholarship or playing in a Super Bowl or being the fullback to, 2 Hall of Famers and Marcus Allen. But no, his greatest gift was his wife. She, over these years, has just been unbelievably carried herself with and is still carrying herself with such grace and humility and strength for the both of them. It's the toughest thing to go visit someone who cannot physically care for themselves and to see what goes on for someone else to have to physically care for someone else on a daily basis, not for because they didn't have the in-home nurse that did all that. No, his wife wanted to do that, so they would have an in-home nurse to give her a break here and there for her to sleep. But other than that, the caring of Steve was done by his wife for 20 plus years.
That's truly amazing. And speaks volumes again about both of them, right? That she's wanting to do that for him, and obviously that they have that connection. Yeah. It's
you, like looking on Facebook and seeing different teammates, send pictures back. There was one of a picture right after the 87 national championship where you have Steve and Tim Manoa hugging and pointing at the camera. These are two guys who were competitive against each other also, but teammates. Their competitiveness made them both better, and they handled that competition with such grace.
Yeah.
That you saw the impetus of what would happen years later, where you would have 3 Penn State fullbacks when you had the Milne and the other 2 guys, sharing
Whitman,
fullback duties, and then going on to both be successful fullbacks afterwards.
Yeah.
And definitely successful fullbacks while playing that position in college, for sure. And I think it's a lot easier for that Penn State team then to know it when they'd already seen the blueprint from Smith and Manoa. And I'm sure before that Joe had tried it with other folks, but I think you really saw it. I mean, people don't realize Steve averaged over 4 yards a carry at fullback.
Yeah.
Splitting time. And it's over 9 or 10 yards per catch.
And it speaks volumes to his unselfishness that I mean, there's a reason he was a captain.
Yes.
And it's not often that you have a captain that's at a position where he's sharing the playing time with another individual.
Yeah.
But again, I think it speaks volumes to his unselfishness and his willingness to truly put team first.
Yeah, he was definitely the glue. I mean, there's so many players that will tell you, Steve, I was down in the dumps, it'd be a player X saying, yeah, I was going through this battle and X, Y, and Z. And I remember Steve stopping to talk to me, at the end of practice, or coming over to me after film session was over, or after being chewed out and talking to me about, don't worry about it. Here's what you need to do, this, that, and the other. I mean, even back to high school, you guys are familiar with Denzel Valentine, the guard that was at Michigan State.
Yeah.
Well, his father, Carlton Valentine, was a sophomore at DeMatha when we were seniors. And Steve lived in Southern Maryland, and Carlton lived in Southeast D.C. Now, Carlton's ride got missed after basketball practice. And Steve heard about it, and Steve went by and picked up Carlton and drove him home to Southeast, which is not really on the way to Southern PG County. But that's what kind of guy Steve was. It wasn't ever about him first. It was about his friends and family and everyone else first.
Well, Rogers, they call Penn State linebacker U, which is something you know a little bit about. But, I feel like if there's another position that it just encompasses the mentality of Penn State football, in my mind, is fullback, right? Which is why it's heartbreaking to me that it has disappeared from modern offenses. But
with you.
One of the things I love about it's not just toughness, right? There's a certain unselfishness to it because a lot of the guys who were good enough to come here and play football or play fullback, and that's been true for decades, when they were in high school, they were good enough to be star tailbacks, right?
Yes.
From Matt Suey right on up to Zach Zwinek and plenty of guys in between, including the two guys you just mentioned from the 94 team. And so when I look at, I'm a little bit younger than Ironhead. We won't spend too much time on how much younger. But when I think about the way I came to know Steve Smith as a player, seeing him first with the Nittany Lions, and then, of course, I remember his whole career with the Raiders, which is another one of the organizations, the NFL, that really appreciates guys who can go there and make an impression. And you see the impact he made on his teammates in college and in the pros, and then the toughness and focus that guy clearly possessed in his fight against the disease. And now I'm hearing about from the day you guys stepped on campus, he was the nation's number one running back recruit, gets shifted to fullback on day one, and doesn't bat an eyelash and just takes it all in stride.
Make more good in the all-new Sportage X-Pro. Kia, movement that inspires.
There's always something happening at Quaker Steak and Lube. From live music to exciting new flavors, meet your friends and refuel at your local Quaker Steak and Lube today. Can't slow down? Then order online. Pick up and get back on the road. Find us at thelube.com.
It's a jam-packed night at Medler Field on Saturday, July 9th. Be there for history as the State College Spikes hit the field at 6:35 p.m. as the State College Diamond Dogs taking on the Williamsport Board Apes in the first ever NFT Classic. Plus, it's Autism Acceptance Night as the Central PA Autism Community presents a fidget spinner giveaway for the first 200 kids, along with a spectacular post-game fireworks show. And it's a PA Lottery Super Saturday. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
What's the best mid-size pickup? Tacoma. What's the #1 mid-size truck in resale value? Tacoma. Want to get great gas mileage, 4 doors, and 4-wheel drive? Tacoma. Sioka Toyota of Williamsport has over 25 available right now. You can lease a brand new, never-driven Toyota Tacoma for just $379 a month. That's 30 months, 3,000 cash or trade, 10,000 miles a year. This is while supplies last. Buy yours or reserve yours today and see the Sioka difference. And